And I think it might be good right now to repeat what the fair tax actually is. The fair tax would repeal all taxes on income. No more corporate income tax, personal income tax, no more payroll tax. Most Americans pay more in payroll taxes than income taxes that pays for Social Security and Medicare. We get rid of the gift tax, the estate tax, the alternative minimum tax. No more tax on income at all, and instead we tax a national sales tax on everything you purchased. On average today, the average income American gives the government 33 cents out of every dollar he earns. Under the fair tax, they give the government 23 cents out of every dollar they spend and raise the same amount of money. Now we're going to come to this point because economic forces are going to drive us to this point. I had the privilege of visiting with Chairman Bernanke on this last Wednesday night or 10 days ago or so. One day, whether I'm here or you're here or not, this Congress is going to decide the only way to go is to a more fair tax that taxes not what you put into society, but what you take out. Today we know that on average, 22% of what you pay for is the embedded cost of the IRS. That's all the companies it takes to get a loaf of bread to your table. Their payroll taxes, their income taxes, their compliance costs get embedded in that price system. That's the only way a business can pay a bill is through price. And you pay that business's light bill, their rent, and their tax bill. If we have a price system that's inflated by 22% because of the embedded cost of the IRS, that makes us less than competitive in a global economy. And jobs move into better tax jurisdictions offshore. Secondly, the Tax Foundation said that last year we spent $350 billion filling out IRS paperwork. We spend another $125 billion a year calculating the tax implications of a business decision. If we're spending in excess of $450 billion a year just to fill out forms and send them in, that isn't inefficient, that's stupid. It's like paying for a dead horse. You get nothing from the transaction. Third, the underground economy now is about $2 trillion a year. And the more complex our code gets, the easier it is to go underground and avoid paying taxes. They're not contributing. Fourth is this. There is today in offshore financial centers, in dollar-denominated deposits, $13 trillion. My point to Chairman Bernanke was this. That is money that would be on shore in our markets, in our banks, if we didn't have an IRS. Now, all four of those issues, the embedded costs, the compliance cost, the underground economy, and the offshore investments, would be eliminated and fixed by getting rid of the IRS. None of them will be touched by nibbling around the edges of our current tax system. Fifth is this point. We are having a serious problem starting in real estate in America because people can't afford to pay their mortgages. Some made bad choices, but that's a simple fact. Under the fair tax, the average income earner would have a 50% increase in take-home pay. They'll pay their mortgages. Now, all of this stuff gets fixed in the economy without spending $700 billion here and $700 billion there, without raising taxes and everything, as Mr. Mike has said. Lastly, I'll make this point. We have never taxed wealth in America. We tax wages. And the very first thing wealthy people do is stop getting wages. So they pay a 15% tax on capital gains and dividends, and if the Obama plan goes through, they'll pay a 20% tax. But they don't pay anything to Social Security and Medicare because they have no wages. When Mrs. Kerry had to release her tax return in 2004 during the presidential election, it showed she had $5.1 million in income that previous year. She paid a 12% tax on it. She paid nothing into Social Security and Medicare. She had no wages. This taxes wealth when it's spent. It's fair to assume that she spent a good part of that $5 million on several houses and travel. And in that case, if she'd have spent it all, she'd have put $400,000 into Social Security and Medicare. But we don't tax wealth when it's spent today. Now, what would happen if all of this comes to pass? Our studies from outside consultants say that in the first year we'll have a 10.6% increase in the GDP. I said to Alan Greenspan when he was chairman, is that inflationary? He said, not at all. Not at all. We'd have a 72% increase in capital spending, and we know that real take-home pay for workers increases in exact correspondence with increases in capital spending. We would have jobs coming here. An informal study done at Princeton many years ago asked 500 international companies located in Europe and Japan, what would you do in your long-term planning if the United States eliminated all taxes on capital and labor and taxed only personal consumption? 80% said they'd build their next plant in the United States. If you're selling to Detroit, you'd rather be in Detroit because transportation costs are high. But we've driven them off with tax policy. We have lots of debates on the floor of this House about punishing people who go offshore, locking up their accounts. They're not leaving because they hate America. They're leaving because we kicked them offshore with confiscatory tax policies. This will come to pass. It will be fair. And it's to be hoped that one day we can give back to the American people and the freest society ever known the privilege of anonymity. No one should know as much about us as our tax code. We should have no agency of the federal government that knows more about us than we're willing to tell our children. Under this system, there would be no agency that knew how you made your money, how much you made, or how you spent it. You could anonymously go into any store, buy something, have the tax collected there just like we do in 45 states with the sales tax, and we'd contract with those states to collect the money and remit it to us. We'd have a system of government that was once fair. Let me just close with this comment that when the debate in 1912 over the income tax was hot and heavy in the Senate of the United States, one Southern senator made a statement that was considered so ridiculous and outrageous that he was laughed off the floor of the Senate. And here's what he said. He said, mark my words, that if we pass this, in time they'll be taking 10% of everything you earn. It's considered ridiculous. But it did bring back to mind my favorite country song, if 10% is enough for Jesus, it ought to be enough for Uncle Sam. Thank you.